What does it take to really make the changes starting tomorrow? It takes more than philosophical pronouncement. I know that. It also takes more than enthusiasm. I know we're hearing a lot about enthusiasm these days, but see, that just won't do the job. We're still hearing the old cliches of the 30s, right? To be enthusiastic, you must act enthusiastic. But see, that's not going to help. After you have leaped about, there are some things you got to do, or it isn't going to change. See, you can get all excited about lifting 200 pounds till you get to the gym. And then you need a new excitement. And the new excitement is called discipline. Major step to human progress. Discipline. Now here's the key to discipline. Start with the little disciplines, get excited over the little disciplines, and get right on those, because those will lead to the big ones. You can't handle the big challenges in life unless you take on the little ones. Make a list of all the things you can do. Get right on those. Discipline yourself for those, both for the results and for the muscle and for the practice. So that when life hands you some big challenges, you'll be ready. You'll have the muscle.
Self-discipline. We might add one more word here, consistent. Consistent self-discipline. If we don't make consistent self-discipline part of our daily lives, the results we seek will be sporadic and elusive. It takes a consistent effort to truly manage our valuable time, or we'll be consistently frustrated. Our time will be eaten up by others whose demands are stronger than our own. It takes discipline to conquer the nagging voices in our minds, the fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of poverty, the fear of a broken heart. It takes discipline to keep trying when that nagging voice within us brings up the possibility of failure. It takes discipline to admit our errors and recognize our limitations. The voice of the human ego speaks to all of us. It takes discipline to change a habit, because habits are formed a little bit each day, every day, every day. Once habits are formed, they act like a giant cable. They act like a nearly unbreakable instinct that only long-term disciplined activity can change. We must unweave every strand of the cable of habit slowly and methodically until the cable that once held us in bondage becomes nothing more than scattered strands of wire. It takes the consistent application of a new discipline, a more desirable one to overcome one which is less desirable. It takes discipline to plan. It takes discipline to execute our plan. You've got to really work on your consistent self-discipline on a daily basis, or you'll find yourself distracted. Distracted by negative thoughts, distracted by negative people, and pretty soon, depending on the type of people you've associated with, distracted by your doubts within yourself. Never underestimate the power of influence and associations. And never underestimate the power of your own consistent self-discipline. It's easier to go to bed late, sleep late, show up late, leave early. It's easier not to read. It's easier to turn on the television than to open a book. It's easier to do just enough than to do it all. Waiting is always easier than acting. Trying is always easier than doing. Imagine what life would be like if we didn't have to make our bed in the morning, or keep our garage clean, or pay our taxes, or show up for work tomorrow. Wouldn't it be fascinating if we didn't have to do these things? Wouldn't it be fascinating? What do you suppose would become of us? You're right. Not much. The system we live in and contribute to is designed to make the easiest things in life the most unprofitable. Profitable seems to be the most difficult. Our world is and always will be a constant battle between the life of ease and its momentary rewards and a life of discipline and its far more significant rewards. Each has its own price, the price of discipline or the price of regret. We will pay one or the other. What we wish we had done is the voice of regret, speaking in a sorrowful tone at a time when there is no going back. This is regret. No second chance, No, what would I do differently? Choose one or the other, but both will have their price, the price of discipline or the price of regret. One costs pennies, the other a fortune. The first lesson of discipline is that it isn't the easiest option. The second lesson of discipline is that it's a full-time activity. And we've said that the best form of discipline is consistent self-discipline. You see, the discipline that it takes to make your bed every day is the same discipline necessary for success in the world of business. The discipline to organize your garage is the same discipline to organize your business. All disciplines carry through to affect all parts of our lives. If we're disciplined in just one area and lazy in another, guess what? Pretty soon, the lazy side will creep in and destroy the disciplined side. The bad habits in one area of our life will eventually destroy our self-discipline in the areas we've been working on. Consistency cannot be inconsistent. Discipline is the mind being trained to control our lives. Discipline is a set of standards which we've selected as a personal code of conduct. Discipline is imposing on ourselves the requirements for honoring these standards. Once we've adopted these standards of behavior and conduct, we're committed to honor them. And if we don't, then there can be no disciplined activity. We find ourselves announcing our standards to our relatives, our friends, our associates. We shout our beliefs and condemn those who believe any differently, but then we don't walk the talk. We end up acting in a way far different from the beliefs we've shouted. We tell our kids that the TV is rotting their minds, yet we spend our evenings in front of it. We tell our employees that they must take advantage of every minute of the working day, yet we spend 3 hours at lunch. Do as I say, not as I do. This is inconsistent. This leads to a loss of credibility among those who watch us. And more importantly, this leads to a loss of credibility within ourselves. The only thing worse than one who is inconsistent in applying their self-imposed disciplines is one who has never considered the need or the value of discipline at all. These people seem to wander aimlessly, changing procedures, changing standards, changing loyalties, and shifting frequently from one commitment to another, leaving behind a trail of broken friendships, unfinished projects, and unfulfilled promises, all because of a discipline that was either non-existent or imposed so infrequently that it was ineffective. Here's the third step to becoming consistently self-disciplined. Number 1 is realizing that discipline isn't the easiest option. Number 2, discipline is a full-time activity, day by day, every day. And the third step to becoming self-disciplined is really a philosophy that holds one of life's unique promises. Number 3 simply says, for every disciplined effort, there is a multiple reward. That's one of life's great arrangements. It's like the law of sowing and reaping. In fact, it's an extension of the biblical law that says if you sow well, you reap well. Now here's a unique part of the law of sowing and reaping. Not only does it suggest that we'll all reap what we've sown, it also suggests that we'll reap much more. Life is full of laws that both govern and explain behaviors. But this may well be the major law we need to understand. For every disciplined effort, a multiple reward. For every disciplined effort, a multiple reward. What a concept. If you render unique service, your reward will be multiplied. If you're fair and honest and patient with others, your reward will be multiplied. If you give more than you expect to receive, your reward is more than you expect. But remember, the key word here, as you might well imagine, is discipline. Everything of value requires care and attention. Everything of value requires discipline. Children require discipline. They must have a structure built for them. They must have boundaries to work within so they feel secure and comfortable to explore and grow. They must learn to recognize what's right and what's wrong, what's acceptable behavior, what's not acceptable. Children require unwavering discipline, consistent discipline, or they'll be confused as to how they're supposed to behave. Likewise, our thoughts require discipline. We must set up our inner boundaries, our codes of conduct, or our thoughts will be confused. And with confused thoughts, we'll end up being confused, hopelessly lost in the maze of life. And confused thoughts produce confused results. Look around you at this very moment in time. What might you be doing that needs attention? Perhaps you're listening to this program as you drive along in traffic, blowing your horn at someone ahead of you who isn't driving at the speed you'd like to. Perhaps you're listening alone because you've had a disagreement with someone you love or someone who loves you, and your anger won't allow you to speak to that person. Wouldn't this be an ideal time to examine your need for a new discipline? Perhaps you're on the brink of giving up or starting over or starting out, and the only missing ingredient to your incredible success story in the future is a new and self-imposed discipline that will make you stay longer and try harder and work more intensely than you ever thought you possibly could. The most valuable form of discipline is the one that you impose on yourself. Don't wait for things to deteriorate so drastically that someone else must impose discipline into your life. Wouldn't that be tragic? How could you possibly explain the fact that someone else thought more of you than you thought of yourself? That they forced you to get up early and get out into the marketplace when you would have been content to let success go to someone else who cared more about themselves? Your life, my life, the life of each one of us is going to serve as either a warning or an example.
When I wake up in the morning, I don't think, am I motivated to go do what I'm supposed to do? No, I don't think about it for 1 millisecond. When the alarm clock goes off, I have no thought about whether this is easy, whether this is hard, whether I want to do it, whether I don't want to do it. None of that matters. It's an emotionless, thoughtless discipline. When the alarm clock goes off, you get up, you get out of bed, and you go do what you're supposed to do. I don't care how it feels. I don't care if it's easy or hard. It doesn't even matter to me. It's just a reaction, it's a discipline, and it's life. And that's the way I choose to live my life.
People who are going to be really successful in the future are willing to make sacrifices in the present in order to guarantee that future. And by sacrifices, we mean they're willing to put in the long hours. They're willing to get up earlier. They're willing to work harder. They're willing to stay later. They're willing to invest and save their money, even though they don't have a lot, knowing that with compound interest, it will grow and grow over time. They're willing to spend an enormous amount of time investing in their children, knowing that this investment in their children, in time and love and affection and support, will pay off for decades and generations, even into the lives of their children and grandchildren. So sacrifice is the critical word, and sacrifice means that you have the ability to discipline yourself. You have the ability to delay gratification in the short term so that you can enjoy far greater rewards in the long term. And the wonderful thing is when you practice self-discipline, especially in exercise, for example, but even in hard work, your brain releases endorphins. And endorphins are called nature's happy drug. And it actually makes you happy to practice self-discipline, to take control of yourself and make yourself do the right thing and complete it. You feel good about yourself in the moment. And of course, the effect that it has on your future can be tremendous. Now, some years ago, a businessman named Herbert Gray did a long-time study, it was kind of his project, to find out what he called the common denominator of success. He said the common denominator of success was quite simple. He said, successful people, he found, make a habit of doing what unsuccessful people don't like to do. And of course, the logical question is, well, what is it that unsuccessful people don't like to do? Well, it turned out to be the same thing that successful people don't like to do either, but they do it anyway because they recognize that that's the price of success. A simple thing like exercising, going for a run or a walk at the end of the day. Well, do people like to do this? Do we look forward to exertion and perspiration and sweating and straining and everything else? No, we don't look forward to it, but we do it because we recognize that this is the price of looking and feeling fit, trim, living a long life, taking good care of our bodies, and so on. So remember, the same things that unsuccessful people don't like to do are things you don't like to do either. And again, it comes back to our favorite word, sacrifice. Being willing to pay the price in the present to enjoy the great rewards in the future.
All right, the next personal quality that assures success is you must determine the price that you will have to pay in order to be successful, and then resolve to pay that price. For every single thing you want in life, there's a price. And there's a price that has to be paid, and nature always demands that the price be paid in advance. And the price is invariably hard work. There is no substitute for hard work. Many people say, well, geez, look at that person. They got the nice house and the nice car. You never realize that behind the scenes, that person was probably working 16, 18 hours a day, probably for 5 years before they got their break and 5 years after they got their break. All you see in the end result is the nice house and the nice car. The reason I mention this is sometimes people start a business, they think, well, sure, I'll have to work a couple of extra hours a day. And as somebody once told me, when you start your own business, you only have to work half the time. You only have to work half days from then on. And you can decide which 12 hours it's going to be. In a recent study, they found that in our society, you work 8 hours a day for survival. And everything over that, you work for success. If you're only working 8 hours a day, you won't do anything more than survive. Every additional hour, whether you're working for yourself or someone else, is for success. And so it's very important that you keep putting in those additional hours, whether it's extra reading, extra study, extra work.
In the military academies, I think it's worldwide, it's the same. But in the military academies, whenever you are confronted with a senior officer, and you have, let us say you have your tie is askew, or your jacket is not ironed, they'll say, "Cadet, why is your jacket unironed?" And you're only allowed to give one of three answers. Yes, sir, no excuse. You are not allowed to say any other words to a senior officer except, yes, sir, I will do it. No, sir, I didn't do it. And no excuses, sir. And that's how they train the top officers in the world, is yes, sir, no excuses. Because they know that nothing makes a person weaker or littler than always making excuses. You just sound awful. You just sound incompetent. No leader could be a leader if all they did was make excuses. There's a turning point in your life where you become an adult or you remain a child. And it's like a line that you cross. You come up to this line, and on one side of the line, other side of the line is responsibility, where you are now responsible for the rest of your life. On this side of the line is blaming others for your problems. Blaming is the major source of negative emotions and unhappiness and stress and failure. Accepting responsibility is the major reason for happiness, personal power, and success. When you step across the line, you say, from now on, I accept complete responsibility for my life and for everything that happens to me. If you have a goal, you accept responsibility for achieving the goal. If you have a problem, you accept responsibility for solving the problem. But whatever happens, you don't blame other people. Blaming makes you weak and angry. It makes you feel inferior and insecure.
Too much of anything is a bad thing. Life without balance results in an unbalanced life. Walking around the block every day is good. Walking or running 6 hours a day is bad. It's obsessive. Unless, of course, you make your living as a marathon runner. Then you're doing your job. Eating an apple a day is good. Eating only apples is bad. You won't get all the protein and vitamins and nutrients your body needs. Working hard, burning the midnight oil, doing it until is good. Working nonstop, never taking a vacation, never having any fun, never spending quality time with the people you love, working day after day, month after month, never taking a break year after year, is bad. If you've got your nose to the grindstone all the time, How are you ever going to spot new opportunities, consider new ideas? It doesn't work that way. You've got to stop and ponder where you've been and where you're going. You've got to reflect so you know if you're even on the right track. Everyone has heard the story of Willie Loman in the play Death of a Salesman. Willie was a workaholic. He typified the old-fashioned concept of success. After all, if you're always working, you must be successful. No, it doesn't work that way. For workaholics, there's never enough work. They can work 10, 12, 14 hours a day, take 2 jobs, work them back to back. The only satisfaction is fighting off sleep, denying life's pleasures, getting more tasks done. Some people are impressed with this type of behavior. But just because a workaholic spends too much time working, that doesn't mean he or she ends up with the most money. These people are generally more task-oriented than results-oriented. They're busy being busy, not busy being productive. Workaholics generally end up alienating their families, losing their health, facing a crisis of values. Now, wouldn't you prefer a life of productivity rather than a life of tasks? Of course. When you schedule your time and take advantage of your time, you can work smarter instead of working longer, and you'll probably end up getting more done than the workaholic, and still have time for other things in life. Enlightened self-interest says, I will look for new ways to work smarter by focusing on doing more per hour instead of doing more hours. It says I will run my day so my day doesn't run me. Enlightened self-interest also says that a life worth living comes from a life of balance and moderation. Too much of anything, even good things, will sooner or later throw you off track. Now, here's a key technique that you can use in your life to help keep you on the right track. This technique is called visual chain thinking. Ambitious people don't see each step toward their goals as a singular step. Each discipline as a singular discipline. Each project as a singular project. Each sale as a singular sale. With everything they do and with every discipline they adhere to, they see it all as part of a chain, a link in the chain of events and actions that will lead them to their final destination. Every action and every discipline today is a link in the chain. Every action and every discipline tomorrow is a link. Every action and every discipline in the future is a link. When you can see that every link in the chain will eventually lead you to the things you want most out of life, to the person you want to become, then you won't grow discouraged or fearful or impatient with today. When you can see where you're going through visual chain thinking, even on the toughest days, you'll keep building your ambition by knowing where you're going, not just where you are today. Part of this visual chain thinking is built when you decide on your direction, when you can see where you're going to end up before you get there, when you can see California while staring at the east side of a 14,000-foot mountain. And building your visual chain of thought begins when you have well-defined plans for your career, your family activities, your investments, and your health. Your plans and goals are your visual chain, knowing where you're going before you get there.
The 7th law of achievement is the law of preparation, which says that perfect performance is preceded by painstaking preparation. The mark of the serious person and the real professional in any field is that he takes more time to prepare thoroughly than the average person does. The non-serious person or the non-professional always attempts to bluff or to wing it. He tries to get by with a minimum of preparation without realizing that his level of preparation is immediately evident to everyone around him. One of my favorite quotes, which has had a powerful effect in shaping my life and attitude, comes from Abraham Lincoln, who said, "I shall study and prepare myself, and someday my chance will come." He recognized, as do all great men and women, that painstaking and thorough preparation is the key to the future. The first part of the law of preparation is simply do your homework. It's the details that trip you up every single time. My friend Joel Weldon gave a wonderful talk a few years ago entitled Elephants Don't Bite. The essence of his talk was that it was the mosquitoes of life. The small things that tend to be ignored that cause you the most trouble. No one ever gets bitten by an elephant, but people get bitten by mosquitoes all the time. His message was that if you want to get to the top of your field, you must be fastidious about the little things because, as a minister once said, good is in the details. The second part of the law of preparation comes from the business writer Peter Drucker, who wrote that action without thinking is the cause of every failure. Action without taking the time to think through the details and their possible ramifications seems to be the underlying cause of most failure in life. The opposite of this statement is that action preceded by thinking and planning is the cause of virtually every success. This doesn't mean that you'll automatically be successful if you plan thoroughly in advance, but it means that you must almost inevitably fail if you don't do it. The third part of this law comes from Benjamin Trigo, who said that if it's not worth doing, it's not worth doing well. Details are important, it's true, but you need to think through the value and importance of each detail before you overcommit your time and your resources to them. Each law of achievement is the law of forced efficiency. This law states that the more things you have to do in a limited space of time, the more you will be forced to work on your most important tasks. This is another way of saying that there's never enough time to do everything, but there's always enough time to do the important things. The more you take on, the more likely it is that you'll be forced to think, analyze, and evaluate your tasks and activities in such a way that you spend your limited mental and physical energy on just those tasks that are the most vital to your success. There are two parts of the law of forced efficiency. The first is that there will never be enough time to do everything that you have to do. The busier and more successful you become, the more true this statement will be. If you have lots of time to do your work, it means that you are underemployed, underpaid, and well along on the low road, frustration and disappointment in your career. The fact is that you can only discover how much you can do by trying to do too much. You can only find out how far you can go by going too far. You discover how much you can take on by taking on more than you can do. The second part of this law, which is the key question in personal efficiency and time management, is to ask yourself continually, what is the most valuable use of my time right now? Always keep yourself on track and focus on your most important responsibilities by asking yourself, hour by hour and minute by minute, what is the most valuable use of my time right now? The ninth law of achievement is the law of decision. It says that every great leap forward in life is preceded by a clear decision that leads to action. All high-achieving men and women tend to be very decisive in their thoughts and actions. They think things through carefully. They decide exactly what they want. And then they make clear decisions and take action to make those decisions a reality. In your life, you've had several experiences where you've been unsure of what to do, and you've resolved your dilemma by making a clear decision one way or the other. In looking back, you'll probably find that that was the turning point for you, and that everything else flowed from the decision. The ability to make good decisions is one of the most critical thinking skills of the successful man or woman. In fact, in one study, the careers of managers who were promoted rapidly were compared to those of managers who were passed over for promotion. Researchers found the one distinguishing behavior between the two groups was that the more rapidly promoted managers were more decisive in doing their jobs. The interesting fact that came out of this study was that given written tests with hypothetical problems, both sets of managers were equally accurate in their answers. The more successful managers, however, on the job, were willing to make decisions based on their answers, while the unsuccessful managers were afraid to for fear of making a mistake. The very act of being decisive can be the critical factor that enables you to take command of a situation and move ahead more rapidly. We found that high achievers are not necessarily those who make the right decisions every time, but they're those people who make their decisions right. They accept feedback and self-correct. They take in new information and change if necessary, but they are always decisive, always moving forward, never wishy-washy or vacillating in their attitudes toward life.
The first part of the law of decision is simply this: act boldly and unseen forces will come to your aid. It seems that when you grasp a situation and step forward courageously, a series of unseen forces, most of which are explained by the laws in this program, seem to emerge and help you achieve your goals. Your very willingness to take action rather than to delay or procrastinate seems to bring universal powers to your assistance. The second part of the law of decision comes from the wonderful book by Dorothea Brande entitled Wake Up and Live. She wrote that the discovery that changed her life and the lives of thousands of others who heard it from her in her public talks was the simple success formula that says, act as if it were impossible to fail, and it shall be. When you imagine that your success will be guaranteed if you simply take action and you act on that premise, a whole series of forces begins to support you and move you toward the attainment of your desires. So when in doubt, act as if it were impossible to fail and push forward. The third part of the law of decision comes from the famous Nike commercial, which says, just do it. These three words really summarize one of the great formulas for success. Just do it. So be decisive, go for it, take a chance, act boldly, and unseen forces will come to your aid. The 10th law of achievement is the law of creativity. It says that every advance in human life begins with an idea in the mind of one person. It's ideas that you generate that enable you to solve your problems, overcome your obstacles, and achieve your goals. Ideas are the keys to the future. It's hardly possible for you to achieve anything of note except to the degree to which you think and do something new and different from what's been done before. All it takes is a small innovation to lay the foundation for a fortune and great success in life. The first part of this law says that your ability to generate constructive ideas is, to all intents and purposes, unlimited. Therefore, your future potential is unlimited as well. Ideas are a mode of transportation, a vehicle that you can use to take you from wherever you are to wherever you want to go. Your job is simply to generate as many ideas as possible, evaluate them carefully against your current goals, and then take action on them. There's virtually no obstacle in life that you cannot overcome with the power of thought, with the power of creative concentration, with the power of ideas. The second part of this law comes from Napoleon Hill, who said in his famous words, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Your mind is structured in such a way that you cannot at the same time have an idea and not also have the ability to bring that idea into reality. The very existence of an idea in your conscious mind means that you have within you and around you the capacity to achieve it. The only question you have to ask yourself is, how badly do I want it? The third part of the law of creativity comes from Napoleon Bonaparte, who said, imagination rules the world. Everything you see around you is the result of what was initially a single idea in the mind of a single person. Our entire world started from thought brought into reality. The fourth and final part of this law comes from Einstein, who said simply that imagination is more important than facts. There have been countless occasions in your life, in the lives of others, where the facts say one thing, but your ideas and creative energy enable you to do something completely different. Virtually every important turning point in your life and human destiny begins with an idea that causes you to see things differently and to take action that you would not have taken in the absence of that idea. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever your situation, you have the creative capacity in the form of an infinite ability to generate ideas to solve any problem and achieve any goal. It's up to you. The 11th law of achievement is the law of flexibility. This law says that success is best achieved when you are clear about the goal, but flexible about the process of getting there. This is one of the most important conclusions ever reached by high-achieving men and women. When you set a clear goal for yourself and make a plan, you usually have a fairly good idea of what it is you have to do to get whatever it is you want to achieve. However, 1,000 things can change, each of which will require alterations in your plan of action. The most optimistic and enthusiastic people are those who are open, flexible, and fluid in the face of the inevitable and the myriad changes required as they move toward the accomplishment of something that's important to them. The first part of the law of flexibility is that the experience of resistance and frustration is often an indication that you're doing the wrong thing. Whenever you feel that you're butting your head against the wall and not making progress, step back and re-examine your plan. Be sure that the goal you're working toward is still the goal that you desire, and then sit down and make better plans. Take the mentality of a computer programmer. When he designs a computer program, he knows that the program will be full of defects when it's completed. No computer program ever works perfectly the first time it's tried. However, the programmer accepts this as a factor of life and then begins to go back through the program step by step to remove the defects. When the programmer is finished, the program will operate perfectly. By the same token, whenever your plans don't seem to be bearing fruit, look in the mirror, re-examine your plans, and redesign them until you have faultless plans that work and move you forward without anxiety and frustration. The second part of the law of flexibility is that you are only as free in life as the number of developed options that you have available to you. Your freedom and happiness are largely determined by the number of alternatives that you've developed in case your first choice doesn't work. The more thoroughly developed your options and alternatives, the more freedom you have. If one course of action doesn't develop as you expected, you're fully prepared to switch. In my courses on decision-making, once the decision has been reached, I encourage the participants to ask the question, what else would be a good decision in this situation? The very exercise of developing alternatives enables you to think more clearly and can be a major contributor to the level of achievement that you experience. The third part of the law of flexibility is that crisis is change trying to take place. Whenever you're experiencing a crisis or difficulty of any kind, stand back for a moment and ask yourself what change is trying to take place that is being signaled to me as a result of this crisis. You may be having a crisis in your work, in your personal relationships, with your health, or with your business. In almost every case, a crisis is an indication that something is wrong and that pursuing the same course would be an unwise thing to do. So, what is the change that's trying to take place in your life right now? The fourth part of the law of flexibility is that errant assumptions lie at the root of every failure. Almost every failure you have will be based on an incorrect assumption that you've made and accepted without question. It's always a good exercise to clarify your assumptions, especially when things aren't going as well as you want. So what are your assumptions? First, what are your explicit assumptions, the ones you're clearly aware of? And second, what are your implicit assumptions, the ones that you may be accepting without question? What if your most cherished assumptions were wrong? What changes would this dictate? How flexible and fluid would you have to be? To redirect your course of action if something that you're assuming as a fact turned out not to be true at all. Whenever you make the right decisions and you achieve your goals on schedule, it's always because the assumptions that you were operating on turned out to be true. Many people go broke in starting their own businesses because they assume that there's a big enough market for the product or service that they propose to offer. They also assume that customers will switch from their current suppliers to them for no other reason than that they are in the marketplace. They sometimes assume that they have the talents and skills and abilities to provide the product or service at a competitive price and still make a profit. Well, your willingness to question your assumptions, to test your assumptions against reality, with the willingness to accept the possibility that you could be wrong, is the kind of attitude that will ultimately lead you to great achievement. Flexibility is considered to be perhaps the most important single quality necessary for success in our competitive society for the rest of the century and into the century beyond. The 12th law of achievement is the law of persistence. This law says that your ability to persist in the face of setbacks and disappointments is your measure of your belief in yourself and your ability to succeed. Persistence is the iron quality of success. Sometimes your willingness to persist is your greatest asset and is the quality that separates you from everyone else. Sometimes the strongest thing you have going for you is your ability to persist longer than anyone else. The first part of the law of persistence is simply that persistence is self-discipline in action. It's when you face the inevitable setbacks and delays and disappointments and temporary defeats, and you continue to persist in spite of them, that you demonstrate to yourself and others that you have the character of self-discipline and self-mastery that is absolutely indispensable for the great success that you desire. Churchill summarized the second part of the law of persistence when he said, "Never give up, never, never give up." Churchill believed, and he proved throughout his lifetime, that bulldog tenacity in the face of what appeared to be overwhelming defeat was often the critical quality that turned that defeat into victory. Integrity and character go hand in hand. Your character is the sum total result of all your choices and decisions to the present moment. It has been said that if honesty didn't exist, it would have to be invented as the surest way of becoming wealthy, also as the surest way of making a great life. Your character, your integrity, is your most precious asset. Nature has constructed us in such a way that we are only happy and contented inside when we are living up to our highest ideals. The Russian philosopher, mathematician, and metaphysician said many years ago that psychology begins with oneself and with the study lying. Uspansky explained that man is a lying organism, that human beings go to the greater lengths to protect themselves from reality, and they live enmeshed in a web of lies. They claim to be well informed in areas where they are obviously ignorant. They have grandiose ideas about their own talents and abilities, and they simultaneously denigrate the talents and abilities of others, especially those who are successful. Psychologists have various names for behaviors that people engage in to avoid facing reality. Names like repression when we push it under or push it away, projection when we project our own negative qualities onto others, delusion when we live in a world of our own making, and especially denial of reality. The refusal to face the truth about the parts of ourselves and our lives that we feel are undesirable is probably the major single cause of mental and psychosomatic illness. All denial causes tremendous stress, and if the stress is not dealt with at the mental level, it usually erupts physically. Denial occurs when we engage in face-saving mental exercises to avoid confronting the realities of our lives. Every act of denial is a form of lying to ourselves, and the more we deny, the more we get out of harmony and lose our peace of mind. In fact, your peace of mind, that sensation of inner calm and tranquility, is your finest barometer of what is right and good and true for you. You will always be at peace when you are living, acting, and talking in harmony with your innermost convictions. Whenever you feel unhappy or out of sorts for some reason, stop and ask yourself, what is it in my life that I'm not facing? I found as a young man, and less as the years go by, that very often we feel unhappy and uncomfortable when there's something unpleasant in our lives that we're not facing or not dealing with. Whenever we find ourselves in a job or a relationship or a situation that is not right for us, we begin to feel uncomfortable and dissatisfied. What we have to do is be your own psychologist and delve into yourself and look at your life. Ask yourself, what is it that I'm not facing? The solution to any uneasy feeling, any situation of denial in your life, is to confront the situation head on and resolve it one way or another. This is something that often takes tremendous courage. Often we live a lie because we rationalize that somehow it will benefit others, and we have no right to be selfish. However, the truth is that you never do anybody any lasting good by compromising your integrity. Couples that stay together when the love has gone out of the marriage for the sake of the children find that they hurt their children more than they could possibly imagine. There is nothing that so undermines and destroys the character and personality of a child as to grow up in a loveless home. It's always far better that the child be with one parent who loves them completely rather than two parents who don't love each other at all. The real reason people stay in a bad situation is usually fear of some kind. The terrible thing about giving into your fears is that eventually giving into your fears becomes a habit, and you no longer have the strength of character to act in your own best interests. A man or woman who resigns themselves to a situation that does not bring them peace and contentment is doomed to a life of unhappiness and underachievement. You see people like that around you all the time. The natural tendency of human nature is to do and say what is fun or easy rather than what is right and necessary. This tendency toward expediency, taking the fastest, easiest route, is the exact opposite of integrity. Your life begins to become a masterpiece when you get each part of it aligned with your highest ideals and values. One of the most important exercises you can perform is to sit down with a piece of paper and write out what you value the most in life: the people, the qualities, the activities, and the characteristics. So, if you find where you are doing one thing with your life that is inconsistent with what you believe, everyone has had the experience of working at a job they didn't like, and the person to the right of them and the person to the left of them loved the job and thought it was wonderful. But you didn't enjoy it at all, and when you left the job, you left it with a great sigh of relief. The reason for that is always because the job and the demands of the job were inconsistent with your unique set of values and ideals. And when you find a job that is perfect for you, you enjoy every single minute of it. The great tragedy is that the majority of people lead lives of quiet desperation. They work at jobs they hate, they stay in relationships they don't like, and they refuse to live up to their highest ideals of integrity. So, be scrupulously honest with yourself in every area of your life, and then you can be honest with others. It is impossible to succeed in business except by developing a reputation for honesty and dependability. It is a gross distortion to see that businessmen are portrayed as crooks in over 80% of network television shows. In reality, there are very few dishonest business people, and what few there are don't last very long. They're soon gone. All good business, like all good lives, is based on trust. Trust with customers, trust with suppliers, the trust of employees, and the trust of your financial intermediaries, your bankers. Every large business was once a small business that grew because it served its customers with the best products at the best prices possible in a competitive market. Anyone who works for a successful business can be proud to be part of an organization that serves people day in and day out with the things they need to enjoy and fulfill their lives. Integrity means living in harmony with the great cosmic law of cause and effect, the biblical law of sowing and reaping. Never expect to reap more than you've sown or to harvest before your crop has had time to grow. Never expect to get more or different from what you put in. Remember, as you start this day and duty crowds your mind, that kindness comes so quickly back to those who first are kind. Let that thought and this one direct you through each day. The only things we ever keep are the things we give away. So never expect to get something for nothing. And never pursue get-rich-quick schemes. There are no rewards without long, hard hours and years of steady, dependable work. Most people become wealthy after the age of 40, mostly because they chop and change and try different things and take shortcuts in their 20s and 30s. It's only after the age of 40 that they settle down to the long, hard, dependable, steady, consistent work that achieves great wealth. I once read the confession of a con man who claimed that the only person in the world that he couldn't swindle was an honest man. He said everyone else was easy to swindle because they were motivated by greed. They were looking for something for nothing. Forbes magazine said recently with regard to hot tips in the stock market, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Integrity means accepting that you are responsible for your life and never complaining. It means accepting that you are where you are and what you are as a result of your own conduct and your own behavior, no one else's. If you don't like the way things are, get busy and change them. And if you're not willing to change them, then don't complain. The dictionary definition of integrity is wholeness, oneness, unity, complete without fault, perfect, and in the physical realm, living a life of integrity means taking care of your body and your health. Look at the way you treat your body. Look at the things you do to it. Is this part of living a life of complete integrity? One of the best rules for healthy living is to resolve right now to outlive your doctor and take care of yourself as though you plan to live to 100. One of the things that you should do is set a goal to live to be 100 years old, and then sit down and make a plan. Look at everything that you're doing today and ask, is this going to assure that I live to the maximum lifespan possible? What many people do in their younger years is they do things to their bodies. They smoke and drink to excess. They don't exercise. They eat the wrong foods, and they pay for it very, very dearly with degenerative diseases, senility, pain, and sometimes incapacitation later on in life. The time to start planning to live a long life is as young as possible. And we also know that the inability to discipline yourself with regard to physical appetites leads to a lack of discipline in other things. People who are incapable of disciplining their physical appetites are usually suspect by people who expect them to act in a disciplined, organized fashion in other areas. Practice the universal maxim of philosopher Immanuel Kant, who said, live your life as though your every act were to become a universal law. Always err on the side of fairness in your dealings with others, especially when you have the upper hand. Practice the golden rule and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you live your life alone and with others as you would like to be remembered, as a role model for others, you will feel the deep down pride and satisfaction of being a whole person, a light under your world. And finally, remember that nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. Never compromise it for anything or anyone. This is one of the most important questions of your life, my life, or any life. Are you going to fulfill your potential and become everything you're capable of becoming? Most people do not. Only a small percentage of individuals in each generation live their lives to the full, functioning at the outer limits of their capabilities. The majority simply live lives of quiet desperation, feeling helpless and trapped by circumstances beyond their control, by fears and doubts that hold them back. I'm convinced that fear is and always has been the great enemy of human potential. More people are held back by fears, real and imagined, conscious and unconscious, than by any other factor. Children are born with only two fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. All other fears are learned as we grow up. The psychological impact of punishment, scolding, and spanking all meant to help us learn, is the development of feelings of inferiority, inadequacy, and self-doubt. These feelings translate into fears of failure, fears of rejection, fears of poverty, loss, lack, and limitation. We know that whichever emotion is strongest in us will determine our response to any situation. And whatever emotion we give into the most becomes the controlling emotion in our lives. For most people, fear is the dominant emotion. The opposite of fear is love, especially self-love, self-esteem, which is expressed in desire. That's why intense desire, a powerful emotion, is the starting point of all great success, because if your desire is strong enough, it will overcome your fears. If fear is the great enemy of human potential, especially the fear of failure, then the great business of success depends upon the development of courage. The future belongs to the risk takers. They are the movers and shakers, the people who make things happen. The risk takers are the tiny minority who lead the human race forward, who face their fears, who act in the face of uncertainty, and dare to move forward. Courage is the indispensable requirement of greatness. Yet courage, as Kipling said, is not the absence of fear but the control of fear, mastery of fear, which can be learned as all emotions are learned. The Greek military historian Thucydides said that self-control is the basis of self-respect, and self-respect is the basis of courage. We develop courage by taking full and complete control over our lives and our thinking. That is why it is so vitally important to accept 100% responsibility, to set clear, specific, challenging goals, to commit yourself to becoming excellent in your chosen field, and to act with integrity in all situations. Each of these actions builds self-confidence and self-esteem and simultaneously diminishes the role of fear in your decision-making. You can overcome your fears and develop the habit of courage by practicing the behaviors of others who have done it before you. Remember, only action is action. Only your actions express your true beliefs and values. The first part of triumph is always to try. Every great life begins with an act of courage, often daring, going beyond your personal boundaries into unexplored terrain, controlling and mastering your fears as you advance. The hero is just an ordinary person who is brave 5 minutes longer than the others. You develop courage by being courageous when every fiber of your being is pulling you back towards safety in the comfort zone. The need for security of life, limb, and property is the basic human need, the survival need. But the quest for security often creates only insecurity. General Douglas MacArthur said, "There is no security in life, only opportunity." How do you develop the courage you need to be successful? Here are some ideas you can use that have been used by others. Remember always that the fear of failure is a learned habit, a conditioned response that can be unlearned with practice. If you don't think the fear of failure has a predominant place in your life, ask yourself this question. What great things would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? What changes would you make in your life if you knew you could not fail? That'll give you an idea of how much the unconscious fears of failure hold us back. Much fear is caused by ignorance. The more you learn about any subject or area of endeavor, the less fear you will have. Take time to get the facts and separate the facts from the opinions. Remain objective by striving for clarity and details before deciding on taking action. When confronted with a fearful situation, step back and take the time to develop an organized response. Think on paper and review all the information. This will give you that essential feeling of control so necessary for maximum effectiveness. In any fear-causing situation, stop and ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen here? Then take some time to develop alternatives so you are ready with another course of action no matter what happens. Be decisive. Don't sit on the fence. Make firm commitments to your job, your company, your family. Take a stand for what you believe in. Don't be wishy-washy. There is something about a principled person making a firm decision and acting on it that causes things to happen, which never would have occurred otherwise. Opportunities open up for the man or woman who acts courageously. Assistance will come to you in ways you cannot predict. You can largely neutralize the fears of failure that inhibit effective action by using visualization and positive affirmations by reprogramming yourself for success. Every time you visualize your goal and see it as already attained in your mind, you intensify your desire and diminish your fears. Whenever you feel the tightness in your solar plexus, which signals that you fear failure and something coming up, sit down quietly and repeat the words, "I can do it. I can do it. I can do it," over and over with enthusiasm until the fear subsides. With regard to developing courage, perhaps the best success method of all in dealing with fear was explained in Dorothea Brand's 1935 bestseller, Wake Up and Live. She found the formula that turned her life around in these words. She said, "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Act as though it were impossible to fail. If you force yourself to act the part of a fearless, courageous person, in time it will stop being an act and become your reality. Remember, Most of what we do is habit, either good habits that lead to success or bad habits that lead to failure. Therefore, whenever you have the choice of moving forward or playing it safe, choose to move forward, because whatever you choose, that will become your habit, and your habits will determine your destiny. The flip side of the coin of courage is the quality of persistence. The two are inseparable and develop simultaneously. Persistence is self-discipline in action. To persist in the face of adversity requires courage, character, and a deep abiding faith in yourself and your ability to overcome. Just as you can never achieve more than you can believe yourself capable of, your capacity for faith grows as you practice sticking to it when the going gets rough. Most of us start off in life with an overabundance of self-doubt, lacking self-confidence in many areas, maybe even with an inferiority complex. In fact, your willingness to persist in spite of temporary setbacks and disappointments is your true measure of your belief in yourself and in your ability to succeed. Every man or woman who has ever achieved anything worthwhile has had to endure the dark night of the soul, those agonizing periods when it seems that all is lost and there's no purpose in hanging on. However, they find that nature is a trickster, and you are often only one step from victory. The real aim of life is to develop character and substance as a human being, to become a man or a woman for all seasons, a person of whom nature can be proud. But character can only be developed in the crucible of experience, hard, bitter, difficult experience. Adversity is not to be feared and avoided. It is to be embraced and overcome. Within every setback or difficulty lies a valuable lesson, often an advantage or benefit that you can find if you look for it. Napoleon Hill, in his success classic Think and Grow Rich, said that persistence is to the character of man or woman as carbon is to steel. The more often you fail and learn from your failures, the more rapidly you move ahead. Anyone can persist and have courage when the going is good. It's when the outlook seems bleak that character is required. In the poem Carry On by Robert W. Service, he says, "And so in the strife of the battle of life, it's easy to fight when you're winning. It's easy to slave and starve and be brave when the dawn of success is beginning. But the man who can meet despair and defeat with a cheer, there's the man of God's choosing. The man who can fight to heaven's own height is the man who can fight when he's losing. You must resolve in advance that no matter what happens, you will never give up. Take every setback as a spur to greater effort, as a challenge to bring out the best in you. Never consider the possibility of failure. Looking upon temporary defeat is simply another way of learning how to succeed. If you have the willpower and determination to stay in there, nothing can stop you in the end. This is the true psychology of success. To do what you should do when you should do it, whether you like it or not, and keep on doing it until you win through it." In closing, here are the famous words of Calvin Coolidge on persistence. He wrote, "Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The key to success has always been and will always be pressed on.